Hi everyone, Alan Knight here with another podcast, and I'm really excited by this one because I think you're going to find that this topic is probably more interesting than most topics I tend to choose. We're going to talk about men and we're going to talk about sensuality. As a matter of fact, the topic is why men need to tap into their sensuality more. And no better person I could have with me as a guest than Dr. Ananya, I think I got that right, Ananya Harvey, who I met through Facebook, and I've met some amazing people in the last 6 months, and she's one of them. And she's a fascinating person. She'll tell you about herself. She has a lot of experience with relationship coaching. So we both agreed that it would be fun to come on and do a session together, upload it, and if you guys like it, we like it, maybe we'll do some more. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ananya. How are you? Welcome to the show, Ananya.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here.
Did I get it right, the pronunciation?
Yeah, that was perfect. Thanks.
Now, is that your name originally from birth?
No, it's not my birth name. It was a name that was given to me after I went through a massive destruction of who I thought I was and stepped into a new sort of life.
Okay, on that note, that's what fascinated me on our first conversation that we had. Before we actually jump into the topic, to give people an ability to know a bit more about yourself and your background, could you take a minute or two and tell us a bit about your background and how it ultimately connects with the work that you do today?
Yep, totally. So I'm actually from a small town in West Texas originally, and I ended up being trained. I spent 10 years as a research chemist. I have a PhD in chemistry. And then for various reasons, I left everything and went on a journey to say yes to all the things that scared me. Because there came a point where I realized that as a scientist, I'd only ever been educated in science, really. I'd never received any classes in how to have healthy relationships, how to relate to my emotions, how to have good sex, nothing. And it was essentially, it was killing me. It was preventing me from having deep connections with people and having successful relationships. So I decided to, for once, ignore all the critical voices in my head. Coming from a very conservative upbringing, I was afraid to do a lot of things. But I decided to say yes and go and take some risks. And so in that process, I stepped into a different way of understanding the world and relationship. I had also been really, really afraid of men and angry at men because of so much relentless harassment, because I perceived that women were second-class citizens, especially as a scientist, you know. So in that process, I ended up totally changing my relationship to men, and now I'm a sex, love, and relationship coach, and I specialize in working with men in tech who want to play at the top of their game, not just in leadership, but in love and relationship as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great introduction. So do you agree there's no better person to talk about this subject than you, clearly?
Definitely not.
But my interest also goes back to when I was 19. I always wanted to do something. I always felt protective of my women friends. I always felt that guys, I mean, obviously men have a lot of wonderful qualities, but when it comes to communication, sexuality, and I always wanted to do something in the world that would make a difference in bringing people together at a higher level. Because when I looked around, sexuality seems so objectified, and it's all about the men being pleased, almost like masturbation rather than true love, sex. And I learned early on that there's nothing greater than having sex with love as a foundation. So I learned that a lot. And I think about it, one gentleman helped me a lot in high school. It was high school, I forget it was, I think at grade 11. And one guy said something very interesting to me because I was too preoccupied with getting excited, my own excitement. And I think I dealt with premature ejaculation. God, I can't believe we're talking about all these things. But
so many people do.
He said something interesting. He said, Alan, don't focus on your needs, focus on pleasing the woman. And that had a big impact on me. And then I realized that was what I wanted to achieve, not just when it came to sex. I wanted to learn love is about unconditionally loving others and the woman by loving and accepting myself. And that's what led me to do the work that I do now. So there's a lot of kind of synchronicity with the work that we do. So let's jump into the topic of why men, when we say men, we don't mean all men, of course, but why many men may need to tap into their sensuality. So do you want to start the ball rolling here? How do you want to work it?
Sure, I can start out. So first I wanted to say one of the things that surprised me the most about working with men is that almost all the men that come to work with me, what they say they want more than anything else is connection.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And it just melts my heart every single time. It's like we have this caricature of what male sexuality is, and it's so not the truth underneath.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Thanks. And so I think sensuality plays a big role in this here. So what is that according to you? And what does it mean to you as a man? I'd love to hear that too.
Well, I mean, it's my own definition, so it's certainly not generic. But to me, there's so much talk about sex, but a lot of the talk about sex is focused on the act of sex, not the spirit behind the act of sex. Yeah. So when as a man, I've been guilty for many, many years of focusing on that. Like, my goal at some point in the stage in my life was just how to attract and seduce a woman, you know, how to get them into bed. I mean, that was part of, as a man, I went through that. But I had one awakening experience at one point, which I'm going to answer your question about sensuality, where I met a woman that made my knees shake, but the knees shaking was not due to sexual attraction per se. Mm-hmm. It was a much deeper connection. Call it soulmate connection. Soulmates, I love the whole soulmate revolution that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. So it was more of a soulmate connection that was so profound and shook my whole body that once I got my heart involved, I realized that the whole experience opened my heart up, not just the lower organs.
Yeah.
And when I opened up my heart to that feeling, everything else seemed empty. As a matter of fact, the next woman I made out with in a car, I drove home and I was depressed. I wasn't happy that I made out. And in the past, I would have been happy to make out with the woman. I knew at that time that my life changed forever. So how I see it, to me, when I talk about sensuality, is someone who senses themselves deep enough that they're tapped into the depth of who they are from the soul level, and then can project that into a soul-to-soul, heart-to-heart connection with the woman or the man.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's delicious. Thank you.
Oh, really? Did I say something right?
You can't get it wrong. There's no getting it wrong here.
Why was that delicious? Tell us why you said that.
Well, because I just really felt that in my body when you said it, right? To have that deep soul connection and to connect your love and your sex.
Yeah.
Ultimately, just having sex like a robot is going to be empty. You want that connection. You want that soul level there.
So these men that are telling you that they want connection, what have you found out is keeping them and holding them back from not having that connection?
So often it's shame, like religious programming, cultural pressure, or the shaming that we put adolescent boys through around that how dare you feel anything? You are not allowed to feel. The only thing that matters is the number of women that you sleep with and how strong you are in combat, right? So there's just this overwhelming shame that comes when they try to open their heart.
A shame of being vulnerable and thinking that there's something wrong with expressing emotions. Is that what you mean, partly?
Yeah, I think so. Just that they won't be the winner anymore, right? That they will be defeated. Because vulnerability often means I'm opening myself up to being killed or attacked or taken, and I won't be able to succeed anymore at anything. Like, it seems the opposite of what you would want.
Now, let me ask you this. As far as you being a woman, of course, and I speak to a lot of women, and almost all the women I speak to complain that men are not attentive enough. They don't communicate deeply. They don't ask questions. They just talk about either business or sports or try to assert a certain amount of control in a conversation. Is that just a select few, or is that pervasive across society?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, there's such a diverse array of human experience. I know a lot of men who feel like they can't find their masculine power and they want to step more into the masculine. They're really good with emotions, but they're not good with like feeling strong. So it kind of depends on who we talk to. But definitely one of the main things we see among men is what you described. And I think that also came from just this relentless idea that there's only one way to be a man in our culture, and anything less, it means you're being like a woman, and that's the worst thing ever, right? And also, especially if you're a man in tech, like I was, you have to dissociate from your body in order to succeed in that realm. And so they're completely disconnected from their body or their emotions. Like most men, I ask them to tell me, what are you feeling in your body? And they tell me what they're thinking, right? And it's just because they've never known any other way. Like most of us are taught that the body is an inconvenience, like too bad that we have to eat or sleep. We shouldn't have to do that, right? Or that it's kind of dirty and gross if you're a woman.
Yeah.
So we try to just push it away. But it's actually from the body that our power comes.
So how difficult for you has it been to help these men release their blockages and be more willing and able to become more vulnerable? Has that been not a difficult, but is it a lengthy process, or can it happen quite quickly with the men that you work with?
It's both. Some men, it happens like immediately, like in the first month.
Yeah.
And others, it requires a longer, deeper work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for some men, it's actually amazing to do this work with myself as a woman, because I can give them constant positive feedback, and usually they're hungry. We hunger for attention from the opposite sex if we're mostly straight, right? And so getting that positive feedback from when they tell me what they're feeling, it helps so much to just speed up the process.
What percent of the clients that you have are couples, and what percent are single?
Well, I would say that a small amount of my practice is couples, maybe like 10%. And then in terms of the men that I work with, probably half are single and half are in relationship.
Now, do you find that the ones that are in relationship, do you work with just the individual or the couple?
I always start out just working with the individual, and then if it seems like it would be useful to bring their partner in, then we might for a couple sessions, but it really just depends.
And do you find sometimes, like I have, when I help the individual and they want to salvage their relationship, that sometimes when one or both starts to grow, no matter how much they'd like to keep it together, as they grow, they realize how they're growing out of each other. And sometimes it is appropriate to separate. Have you found that to be so quite often, or not so often?
It can happen. It can happen. And that's part of the real deep work that goes on here, is learning to love each other so much that you wish for the best for each other, no matter what that means.
Now, you talked about your background being very conservative. Mm-hmm. What was that one thing, if there was one thing, that dramatically got you fed up with being like that and opened yourself up to new ways of thinking and feeling and acting? Do you remember?
It was a series of things, I would say, and it sounds almost silly to talk about these things this way because they're kind of what you would expect, right? It was psychedelics, it was Burning Man, it was meditation and travel. So
it made you more aware.
Yeah.
It made you more aware. Mm-hmm. So if we would have met you at those conservative days, you would have been quite dramatically different than you are today.
Yes. I was trying to look and act like a man. I was very much in my masculine, and it's great that I have that masculine side. We all have both of these within us, and we want to be a full integrated human being, and that's why I call my work integrated sexuality coaching.
Yeah. It gives me a lot of hope, you telling me that the men that you work with really want connection. It gives me a lot of hope for my soulmate revolution, because the whole soulmate revolution concept came to me in the way that there are all these dating sites and matchmaking sites or whatever, but a lot of times people are coming together without having done the individual work. And I'm a big believer that if you're going to attract a heart-centered relationship, it's going to come from the vibe that you're putting out. So the Soulmate Revolution is going to be founded on Soulmate Power Program, where the individual taps into their own inner soulmate and sets the foundation to draw into their life that heart-centered relationship. And I could suspect that what you and I do is very complementary, because even though we do some similar things, you go into depth with couples and sensuality and sexuality that I don't go into. I could really see the people coming in. Well, some of them will want to work with you, and some of the people you work might want to come into the Soulmate Revolution. So it's kind of a perfect fit. Let's go into business together, Ananya.
All right, let's do it, Allan. I mean, I was going to say, that's the thing. Sometimes like the feminine presence, like what I offer is what is needed where, depending on where a man is at. Yeah. But then sometimes they really need to do this work in the presence of other men, right? Or with someone like you can be very direct and, you know, you have this great masculine edge. So I'm so happy that you're doing this work too. Yeah. We
need a lot of people in the world leading and helping others. So what other things can you tell the audience before we kind of wrap up? And I want to ask you a bit about what, how people get in touch with you. If you were going to give 1 or 2 tips, like I know you could give tons of tips, but if you were going to give 1 or 2 tips today to the audience about sexuality, about relationship, what jumps out at you?
The thing that I keep coming back to over and over again is that we are more the same than we've been told, like men and women. A lot of what we've been taught about female desire is we're starting to see is wrong. And a lot of what we've taught about these rigid stereotypes of how men and women should be, of course, they're totally artificial. That's what I would really encourage everyone to take away, is to do your reading about deep and long human history. And you know, the ways that Homo sapiens have expressed ourselves is so vast and varied throughout history. And we have these archetypes that somehow from the 1950s, where it's like, it's very extreme and it's an unhealthy way of expressing ourselves. So I would say that whatever your truth is as a man, have confidence in that, stand in that. Like, you don't have to measure up to any outside idea of what masculinity should be, right? Figure that out for yourself. Because there are so many different ways that women can be feminine. And then when you're standing in your power and your truth, that's when you find the right person to meet you there.
I feel the same way you felt at the beginning. I felt that. I felt that inside. Are you going to ask me what my tip is?
Yes. What are your tips?
You're pretty adorable. My tip for the day is an unusual tip that I would not normally say, but it's to encourage especially men to become much better listeners. I have found that the biggest compliment that I've had over the years, because I've learned to really honor and respect women and communication in women, and I often get great feedback and acknowledgement of, wow, you really listened to me, and and for me it's become second nature. I don't even have to work on it. But I remember years ago, I wasn't a good listener, and I just would always want to either talk, or if someone asked me a question, if I asked a question, I was thinking already what I'm going to say to them. I wasn't really listening. So I learned some inner fitness listening exercises, and I teach some of my clients. So I'm recommending that you really, really take to heart the importance of listening, because if you could listen attentively, I don't mean just pretending you're listening, really listen to the words, the feeling behind the words, then you have better idea of where the other person is coming from, and you're going to have a better idea of how to communicate with them more effectively. So if you could master your listening over and over again to a new level, it's going to help your relationships big time. That's my tip of the day.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, please. You could disagree, and then I'll disagree with you. That's okay.
Well, what's coming to me is another way that sensuality fits into your tip.
Yours is much more exciting than mine, I'll tell you that.
Because I think, you know, sensuality is a word we associate with the feminine, or maybe with being gay or something like that. And like, when did the ability to feel pleasure in your body and pleasure in everyday life and to dance, how did that get taken away from men? And so listening, it's another way where this comes in, because it's like we've been taught, or mostly men have been taught, to just be defensive, to talk over someone, to control the situation. But instead, if you can find the sensuality in listening, as in, what's pleasurable about hearing the voice of the person you're talking to, right? What's pleasurable about just feeling the energetic connection with them in the moment, right? How can you let their words like dance in your body, and just allow them to see in you how much you enjoy what you're hearing. Even if it's a difficult conversation, find the pleasure in it. And that is a piece of, sensuality, I would say.
That is so exciting, because that ties in to conversations I have over and over again with my women friends. I make a joke. I say, I'm big into emotional intimacy. And I say, I'm into things like emotional penetration, emotional intimacy.
Yes, exactly.
I use these expressions because what we've lost is the ability to dance, is what you're saying. Dance with the other person on all levels. And if you can do that, there's going to be more freedom of positive expression, more connecting, more listening, more honoring, more respecting, more fun, more sexuality in a good way. All of it becomes grist for the mill. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm a big believer with the soulmate revolution, that the focus should be, first, listen to yourself, learn to accept yourself, learn to love yourself like your own child. I like to think that I love myself like I call him Ali Wally, my little boy. Aww. Whereas when I was 21, I saw a picture of myself at 21 last week, and I said, wow, that guy was good looking. I said, I hated myself. I thought I was the scum of the earth, really. And it's funny, because it was good. I think I looked pretty good. Now I'm an old man and I feel great. I feel like little Ali Wally again. I get more attention and more love from the outside than ever before. Yeah. So I think what we're really saying here is the sensuality is about releasing our full self in a very positive way, in a dance with another person. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah, that is a good way to say it.
So, Dr. Ananya, how do people get in touch with you? Because after today, they're going to want to get in touch with you.
Thank you, Allan. Well, a great way to get in touch with me is to follow me on Facebook. I'm Ananya Harvey on Facebook. Or you can go to my website, thenextlevellove.com. Or send me an email, Ananya, Ananya, at thenextlevellove.com.
That's fantastic. And we're going to have to do this again with another topic.
Oh, I feel there's so many topics. Yeah.
We're going to have fun with this. Thank you so much for being here today. It was a joy. And my name is Allan Knight. If you want to get in touch with me, if you want to get a complimentary evaluation and assessment to conquer social anxiety, just connect with me at allanknight.com or allan@allanknight.com. And I'm happy to set that up. In the meantime, look forward to our next one. Take care. Bye, Ananya.
Bye, Allan.